This is House Planning Help episode 15, and it's a different one today. Hello, I'm Ben Adam Smith. No jingle package. We're not even going to be talking about house building or renovation today. If you are someone who is purely interested in all that information, then skip on to the next episode. But I wanted to talk a little bit about climate change today and also content marketing. And the reason is because I've had an idea and I wanted to communicate it to you. I've no idea whether this is going to work. In fact, when I posted up my idea in a climate change forum on Google+, I thought, I'd be really interested to see what people think of my idea. And then I got barred from the group and chucked out, which I thought, I could have the answer here. So I'm having another attempt with you, and I feel as someone who works in the communication industry, I have to have a go at least. I've got to at least try that. And the reason that I want to try this at you is because you've found this podcast or you've read the blog and you must have made a connection already, and hopefully you found what we've talked about so far interesting. And I've set all this up because I believe that energy efficiency is just the way that we need to be going. As I've researched some of these podcasts, I suppose my purpose has meandered a little bit, and we had that episode with Dr. Brenda Boardman where I went to the Climate Change Institute at Oxford University and found out some information there. And it did get me thinking that a lifestyle change, I feel, is imminent. You can debate whether CO2 emissions are man-made, whether we have contributed or not. I know people still don't agree about this, and I'm open to the debate. But just something deep down inside me feels that there is going to be a huge change coming. And as we run out of energy reserves and have to come up with new ways of creating this energy. And another example, I've been watching the David Attenborough show, Africa. David Attenborough is very renowned in the UK, I don't know about the rest of the world, but for creating wildlife programs. And at the end of all of these wildlife programs, there's always an episode saying, all of the animals that you've seen in this show are endangered at the moment, and their species numbers are going down by ridiculous amounts. And you look at, there was another one called Frozen Planet where the ice caps are reducing, and I've read articles in the New Scientist that show the temperature is going up. And to me, this feels like a lot of evidence. Maybe it's not man-made, maybe it's all a natural phenomenon, but we as a species are dominating more of the planet. And something's got to give in the next few years. Maybe this is just my viewpoint. You might have a completely different idea. But this brings me back to content marketing a little bit, because I've been able to create a podcast and a website about something that I'm passionate about, because the energy efficiency, I think, is the common sense route. It's something that we will all be doing in the future. So there's nothing wrong. There's no downside. It's a win-win situation. And I'm part of a group in my local town called Hartford, where we're trying to work out what we should be focusing on in the future, in the next 10 years or 20 years. And we've been talking for a year and developing plans. But it was only in one of the last meetings where I suddenly thought, could content marketing help our town? We've lost quite a lot of trade to the internet, and that's happening a lot around the UK, I'm sure in a lot of Western society, but I don't know that for sure. And so I wondered whether we could look to the internet for some of the answers and try and drive the traffic back using an online community back into the real world. This is going to sound a bit odd to you if you know nothing about content marketing, and there was a slight dilemma of whether I should do this podcast, but the reason I want to do it for the House Planning Help community is because you're the very people that I feel, if you are taken by this idea, yours is the content that we really need on the internet at the moment. So I'm going to delve into that a little bit more, but let's just get back to this meeting in town that I went to. So I told them about the House Planning Help podcast and how I set this up under my own steam, because I felt it was a good route, a good direction, a good use of my resources. I don't want to get 20 or 30 years down the line and I've got kids or grandkids And I said, well, I knew all about all the problems that were coming away, and I just buried my head in the sand. I don't want to be one of those people. I want to be someone who can get out there and say, well, I had a try. I did my best. And that's why I feel at the moment the internet is lacking a voice, not necessarily all about climate change, but just people changing their lifestyle. As this approaches us, we can all do little things. I'm sure you do your own energy efficient things at the moment, switching off lights when you're not in rooms, or making sure there's no food wastage. We all do these little things, but I feel in this day and age, actually, anyone has a voice on the internet. And so that's why I wanted this episode to be about content marketing. It's completely irrelevant to building a house, but it's not irrelevant. I feel it's actually quite important if we are to change our habits in the future. And the worst case scenario is you learn a bit about marketing, because this is marketing, but it's influence-based marketing. So that's why I want to spend one episode concentrating on content marketing. Don't worry, my emphasis is fully on energy efficient homes. And I suppose I'm hoping that this episode might be waiting for the right person. It's not for everyone, I understand that, and to create content is very time consuming. It's either time or resources that you have at your disposal. If you don't have those, then I would definitely not recommend doing content marketing. But to get more voices out there, I'm hoping that the right person listens to this and gets inspired, or certainly wants to find out a little bit more. So we've got a guest today. We're going to chat to a man who's a remote camera specialist for Remantech in Canada. And he's done an incredible job of using content marketing to promote his company. Let's welcome Cesar Abaid. Hello.
Hi, Ben. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. And I'm really interested in hearing a bit more about your story today. So maybe you can start us off with just telling us about who you are and how you got into internet marketing, content marketing.
Yeah. Well, I'm an electrical engineer by trade, and I work here in Canada in our family company. It's a small company, and we provide a service to the construction industry. We basically provide a remote monitoring service. Kind of hard to explain in just a few words, but basically we install cameras on construction sites, and we provide a live feed to parties that are, stakeholders of the project. And we also record the progress of construction in a time-lapse manner, and we link the time-lapse video to the Gantt chart, or the schedule of the project. So it's kind of a unique thing, which is the motivating factor here for me to get into content marketing, and we can get into that a little bit. But see, the service that we provide is not a service that people are looking for yet, because it's kind of new. So they're not Googling what we do and not finding us that way. So content marketing is a good way for people to find us. And that's why I got started with that.
How did you find out about content marketing?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I was trying to think about this, but honestly, I don't exactly remember. How I think is what happened is I was listening to other podcasts. I really like podcasts. So it's a great way to consume content that is, it's not just passively listening to the radio. You go out and you search for topics that you're interested in, and you subscribe and you listen. And there is a podcast that I listen to called Internet Business Mastery. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yep.
And they talk a lot about that. And I think that was the first time that I got that idea, that I learned about content marketing, was through those guys.
I think we should point out at this stage that a lot of people are showing you how you can make money online.
Yeah.
And what you are doing, which is quite interesting, and what I am doing too, is we're using the same approach, but trying to get it off the internet into the real world.
Right. And I think that's one of the criticisms, I guess, that content marketing gets, and blogging and podcasting, is that the only people who can make money with it are the people who are teaching other people how to make money with it. It's kind of a vicious circle. So when guys like you and I use content marketing in another niche that's not the make money online niche, we stand out. As you know, I was just a speaker at the New Media Expo here in the US which is it's a very difficult thing to do. There's so many bloggers who wish they could have this opportunity. Yet me, I only have 37 episodes of my podcast. I was accepted to speak there. And I think one of the reasons why I was accepted is because I'm using content marketing in a different way to promote a service to an industry that is not very much versed into content marketing. So yeah, there's not a whole lot of people out there doing what we're doing.
So you used podcasting to create a program for the construction industry. You called it the Construction Industry Podcast, which I think is a stroke of genius. But how come you're doing the Construction Industry Podcast and not a massive construction firm?
Well, because I was the first, and nobody thought about it. And in fact, this is one of the things I brought up during my talk there. The construction industry is a massive monster. The numbers I shared was, I think in the US alone is a $1.7 trillion industry. And there are 750,000 construction companies in the US alone, which employs, like 7.5 million people. Okay. And any one of those people, any one of those 750,000 companies could be doing what I'm doing, but they're not, so I'm not even a construction company if you think about it. My expertise is IP cameras and IT in a way. But because I took the initiative, now our little company here, Remontech, we are the hosts and producers of the Construction Industry Podcast. So you see it immediately when you take the initiative to do content marketing like this, it really helps with your authority within your sector. And while before we were a 3-person company that's not a construction company, now we are in a position in which people look for us and they listen to my voice. So it's really working well for us.
I'm interested that you have focused just on podcasting. Would you ever want to expand your platform to include video?
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it. I think in fact, when I started with just a blog. It was called the Construction Bridge, and the idea was, a bridge that connect construction professionals. But what I found is it was not my favorite way of creating content, sitting down and writing a blog post once a week. And it became a chore for me. Now, audio, I really have a blast doing this podcast. I get to talk to people from all over the world. I had the architect for the Burj Khalifa on my show, the tallest building in the world. I had the project manager for the Sydney Opera House, for the Panama Canal. And to get to talk to these people, it motivates me to keep doing it. And I had worked with audio before a little bit. I was a recording technician when I was going through university. So I kind of knew, how to work with a mixer and microphones and things like that. Now video, it's not something I'm very familiar with. I know you are. But one thing I learned recently is that you need to know what your strengths are and spend your energy and time improving those strengths that you already have instead of trying to learn something new or create strengths that are not there naturally. So that's why I'm focusing on audio, but I'm not opposed to going to video sometime in the future.
It's interesting that all of this information is on the internet. So even if you're a beginner, you could start to learn, couldn't you? You could find out about podcasting, and it's all there. They describe online. There are certain people, aren't there, who lead you through this process. I don't want to teach this. It's not where my focus is in what I'm doing. But I'm particularly interested in anyone who's listening to this podcast at the moment who might give a different viewpoint on something in their life. I'm particularly thinking, in the introduction, I gave the example of my local town and how we could better promote that. And then I started to think about the bigger picture of climate change and some of the mass change that is coming our way. So where can we learn all of these things?
There is a number of people, and here's the thing, because content marketing, if we take a step back and define it, is to provide content so you educate or entertain people who are in your target market. So without selling what the services and products that you provide directly to them. So over time, it creates this trust between you and your target market. So when they are ready to buy what you provide, they will trust you and buy from you. So that's the whole idea. And there's a number of people doing that on how to do content marketing. So it's kind of a inception kind of, kind of thing. And I mentioned Internet Business Mastery. That's a good place to start. Those guys, they provide I think it's a weekly podcast on creating an internet business, which is based on providing value in a way of not 100%, not all the time in terms of content marketing, but they do cover it there. There's also a number of books that were helpful to me. One of them is Tribes by Seth Godin. It's a great book that talks about how when you have your platform, you are the leader of a tribe, and he describes, the behaviors of the tribe and how you can lead them and help them. There's another book by Gary Vaynerchuk called Crush It, which is really, really helpful. It was really helpful to me as well. It talks about, dominating a niche and using content to do that. He used to work for his dad's liquor store in New York City. And by using content marketing, he just became a really well-known celebrity here in the US and Canada. In terms of, he had a YouTube channel, I think, on wine. And the way he taught people about getting to know wines and what wines were all about were very different from your traditional wine connoisseurs. They used to be very, what's the word? Stiff, if you know what I mean. And Gary is very down to earth, and he even uses curse words here and there. So he used that content of creating the video to promote his own business, and he became a millionaire. He's really well known here for that. And there's a number of other resources too. There's Pat Flynn with smartpassiveincome.com. That guy is really helpful. He shares a lot of ideas on how to create content and help a community. And I could go. There's a group of guys from out of the UK, sitevisibility.com. They have the Internet Marketing Podcast. She's really helpful to me as well. And there's a few others. There's Albert Hatazi, who happens to be a friend of mine, and he has the Local Method podcast. Talks about marketing on the internet for small businesses, and he has some great interviews there as well. So those are just a few names that come to mind right now.
Do you think there is a core of these people who will only escalate in importance, or will other people come up to that level? Because I understand that it takes time to build this platform, which is why I'm thinking for wider issues, people need to be building it now.
Yeah, it does take time. And that's the thing. When people start with content marketing, they want to see results right away. And the truth is you won't. There's another book called Platform by Michael Hyatt. And he goes through almost like a step-by-step on how to create your own platform. But it does take time because it all comes down to trust. The whole thing about content marketing is trust. Over time, people learn to trust you, trust that your content is good and you're out to help them and not to sell to them. So with any relationship, it takes time and it takes effort, but it's worth it, and I think that's the advantage here for people who stick it out is that, I'd say 9 out of 10 people who get into this, they get discouraged after a few months because they check their statistics for site visits and Google Analytics, and they don't see the results, they don't see engagement, and they quit right before things start to gain critical mass. And that's what I'm seeing right now with my platform. At times I thought nobody was listening, but now I know that they are. I can see the downloads, how many downloads I'm getting. I have enough material on my website that people are finding me through Google, using keywords that I did not intend for them to use. They're finding me in different ways. I'm being invited to be on podcasts like this. So it takes time, but it's worth it, and it does work if you put in the effort and the time.
Has all of this peaked, or can you see it getting bigger?
That's a good question, and I think there's still a lot of room for growth, but I don't know if you heard this expression that marketers spoil everything. So I think eventually marketers, professional marketers will really understand how this works And maybe it's going to come to a point where this is not going to be as effective as it is today. But I think there is still room for growth, and especially in when you look from in different industries. For example, the construction industry, there's so much room here for growth because very few people are doing it. So I guess it depends on your niche. When it comes to climate change and environmental issues, I think we were just talking about this off the air, but I think that there's an opportunity here to reach people who are not in tune with these issues by providing content that they're interested in. Because when you start talking about issues that are somewhat controversial, I feel like eventually we end up preaching to the choir. You don't reach other people who are not into the same circles. So content marketing is a great way to get more people into your own how can I put this circle of influence, so they can hear your message, while before they wouldn't have found you because you guys are not speaking the same language.
Climate change is something that I see as being a big change that is coming our way in the future, and I'm aware that people aren't really talking about it, or they don't want to talk about it, and that maybe we should have had this discussion, the discussion we had off the air, in the podcast, because creating content from every person's viewpoint, or say, for example, I'm focusing what I'm doing very much on house building because I believe that's where a big help can be. If we can be more energy efficient and have that as the first thing that we do, then I'm hoping that I can just do my bit there. You've got to have this niche, haven't you? So I'm not sure. This has been quite a difficult podcast to do because I'm not sure what my main message of it is, whether it's just to ask people to start to learn a bit about content marketing, but I do feel it's got a bigger role to play in a huge thing that's coming our way.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. Yeah, and I think what for the listeners, we all have a message. I think we all have something that we care deeply about, and we want to tell the world about. And if you don't, I think maybe you should have something. So the way is I think the way to think about this is to take a step back and think about, okay, what is my message, and who do I want to reach? And then you think about the people that you want to reach, and you try to think about what motivates them, what compels them, and then create content for them. Okay, it might not even be related to climate change at all. Let's say, if that's your passion, but it is content that the people who you want to reach and talk about climate change are interested in. And then in a secondary way, you do talk about your passion and you talk about your cause that way, but you're reaching that target market with content that they're interested in. So we need to learn to think about things from their perspective and then serve them in that way. And that's the way to earn people's trust. That's the way I see it. I as I said, I'm not really even though I'm in the construction industry, I'm not building things. I'm not a construction guy, let's say, but my target market is. And so the topics that I bring to my podcast are topics that, of course, I'm interested in, but they're even more interested in these topics than I am, because that's their day-to-day professional life. So and that's how I get my target market to listen to me. And by the way, I have I install cameras on sites, and I get business that way, and that's, what I mean? So that's the way I see this whole content marketing thing is, think about the target market, serve them, and earn their trust.
I think you do it really well, and you also understand it. And maybe that's what I'm proposing here, that people discover more about content marketing so that they can make their own assessments. I am concerned that probably the biggest niche online that uses content marketing is the how to make money online. But I do think there's an opportunity on there for it to completely open up. You've said it too about the construction industry. There are no voices. You are effectively the voice. Maybe I'm another voice here over in the UK, but I feel that we need to to have more people focused in that way, and you've put it really, really well. Can I ask that maybe I could put you on a special mission?
Sure.
And that is just for me on our podcast here. Maybe we can check in with you at another time and find out. But you probe some of your guests into energy efficiency every so often, where appropriate, and just find out if they're doing everything they can and if they're using the best methods and what those best methods are.
Yeah, and I can do that. I can make a point of doing that every single time. But I have covered this in a few of my episodes. There was an episode that I can't remember every single question that I asked my guests, but there's one episode that we talked about construction waste. I don't know if you listened to that one, but I had Dwayne Craig from constructioninformer.com. Here's another guy who's doing content marketing as well, but he talked about some interesting uses for construction waste in especially in the Middle East and places where there's a lot of bombings and a lot of rubble and wasted concrete that way, how they're using concrete to basically using rubble to make new concrete, and they save so much energy doing that because it's stuff that's already there. There's less waste. So that's just one, but I can see, and you know what? Like if there's a lot of interest in energy efficiency and climate change out there, so I think it's a good point. I should make a point of doing more of that type of work and asking these questions of my guests because of the value of it, and also because there's so much interest in this type of content out there.
Caesar, you are a legend. Where can we find out more about you?
Well, my podcast, you can find my podcast on iTunes if you search for Construction Industry Podcast. I'm also on the web at constructionindustrypodcast.com, and feel free to drop me a line there through the contact page, and I'd be happy to talk to you.
And I think it's strange that we've met through the internet, doing different things, but become friends. And I know that one of my friends was also at this NMX conference, and he came back and he said, "You are such a good guy." And I know that you are. And I hope that we can hear from you again some point.
Thank you. Yeah, for sure. Just let me know.
Cheers, Caesar.
Bye-bye.
And that brings us to the end of this podcast. Just to reiterate, the premise was that content marketing can give you a voice for anyone who's prepared to put that work in. And I know that you may be someone who feels you want to do something, you do believe in climate change, or you do see that we have to turn over a new leaf in terms of our lifestyle. I believe that is influence that content marketing can have. And it's something that we have to embrace the world over. This is why I feel the internet is going to be so key, because we can't get to all the people in the world, or the one way that we could is with the internet. So I definitely feel there's something in this idea. You may disagree. I'm sorry if I've wasted your time, but I felt that it was important enough that I had to dedicate an episode to this. We'll put all the resources that we've mentioned in this episode into the show notes so you can refer back to those. And it's not just about climate change that we're talking you have to make content about. It could be any subject, but the common thread is that realization that change is coming and trying to promote positive habits. I think that's what this is all about. But I really appreciate your time, and I hope you'll enjoy the next episode, which is back on track. Energy efficient homes. You take care of yourself.